Welcome to Uncommon Ground, speaking over shouting. I'm Elijah Wharton.
I'm Jason Moline.
And I'm Andrew Durand.
Today we're going to be discussing the political compass, and during today's episode, Andrew is actually going to be taking the political compass quiz because he hasn't taken it before. Andrew and I, or not Andrew and I, Jason and I, on the other hand, will be discussing kind of what we remember and from taking the quiz, and kind of the logistics of the quiz, as well as how it relates to different political scenarios. And as Andy takes it, he will also be talking about some of the questions from the quiz. So I wanted to start it out for people who haven't taken the political compass quiz before by kind of giving a broad explanation of it. So unlike the political party system, the political compass kind of lays out a map. So the typical political party system works from left to right. And so if you're left, you're a Democrat. Further left you are, the more progressive you are. And the further right you are, if you're on the right, you're a Republican. Further right you are, the more conservative you are. And so there's obvious issues there, because when you have a political system with different layers like economics and social social programs and uh, ideas about budgeting, and you it's hard to be in so cookie cutter about it. And so what the political compass does is it creates a two-dimensional system where it's left to right, like you uh, like you're familiar with, but then it takes an economic scale uh, from authoritarian to libertarian, or I'm sorry, other way around. Libertarian at the bottom, authoritarian at the top. And so by doing that, it can kind of map you in a different quadrant. And so Jason might be able to explain this a little bit better.
Yeah. Can we put up a graphic? Is that a thing that we can do?
I can put up a graphic real quick if you want to.
Of course. Yeah. So I'll probably
Bro,
put up
that's so
the.
fancy. Look
I'll
at the
share it with you
graphics.
guys, but yeah. So I'll put up a graphic about the 2020 Democratic presidential, or not necessarily Democratic, the 2020 presidential primaries. So it has like all the Democrats and then Trump and Jorgensen and Hawkins. So
Okay. So can you, I guess, can you explain to the viewers what it means in terms of being libertarian versus authoritarian? Because we do have a libertarian party, and it's different than that. So I guess can you kind of explain the social scale there?
yeah, the libertarian within the United States has a different meaning than its actual definition. Its actual meaning is just that you are in favor of less governmental less governmental control over individuals. So yeah, pretty
Okay.
much like, and so but in the U.S. that is taken on a different meaning in some situations, to where if you identify as libertarian sometimes within the US, you will be or could be grouped with those that believe that all regulation is bad and the government shouldn't be involved in people's lives at all.
Which is not necessarily true.
Yeah, that doesn't work. It has been proven not to work. Some regulation is necessary for a functioning society. Like, for example, Trump just rolled back a regulation, an Obama era regulation on, uh, I think, coal plants releasing toxic metals into local wastewater. And so that was being blocked before, and they couldn't do that. But now the loophole is that if the plant is to close before, or I think before 2028, they are exempt from all regulations involving uh, metal disposal and wastewater, or toxic metal disposal and wastewater, such as lead, arsenic, mercury, metals like that, that you definitely don't want in your wastewater.
Huh.
But that's just an example of how that framing of libertarianism has been taken on in the US and how is not really at the heart of most people that just care about individual freedoms.
Okay. So I'm gonna put up this graphic because I think I found one. Uh, it's this one is it shows the economic scale versus the social scale, and then it also gives. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay. And then it gives you a label for each quadrant. So there's the authoritarian left, the authoritarian right, the libertarian left, and the libertarian right. Now at the bottom here with the libertarian, that is where if you're completely towards the libertarian side on the social scale, it is anarchism is the basically the social belief there. Whereas if you're all the way at the top here, it's a fascist ideals, and so there actually label some political figures here. So Hitler is way towards the fascist side, whereas Gandhi is more towards the libertarian side. But then you have to look at the economic scale from left to right. And so when you look at this, all the way to the left is communism. So you get people like Stalin, who are a communist fascist. So they are in the top left. Or you get people like Friedman, who are neo-libertarian, and they're really close to the middle line between or anarchism and fascism. So they end up more in the right towards the center. So the closer you are to each one kind of determines your placement, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So I think that
so let's see if I'm evil or not.
Well, I would say I think most of us can agree that we can normally agree on things if we're working between the left and right wing scale. It's that libertarian authoritarian scale where people are a lot less likely to compromise on their beliefs.
I think
Like,
it's
for
more that the
example,
devil's in the details.
Yeah, like
I think that the more, I think that's less that when you talk about left and right, you agree on things, is that very broad spectrum, low resolution, you agree on things based on the left versus the right. The problem is when you start talking about specifics and like the little aspects of it.
yeah, if we're talking about big government, that's where the disagreements on the left right scale come. But when it comes to individual level communities and stuff like that, if you're down at the bottom, you will most likely agree on a lot of things, like community improvement and stuff like that. Like, I can't really
I
see
feel as
many
though
situations
I
of
feel as though I
disagreement.
should read this before taking the test thing, because I'm going to read this, but I'm probably going to do it anyway because that's what I do. It says, before taking the test, please note that this isn't a survey and these aren't questions. They're propositions. To question the logic of individual ones that irritate you is to miss the point. Some propositions are extreme and some are moderate. That's how we can show you whether you lean towards extremism or moderation on the compass. Your responses should not be overthought. Some of them are intentionally vague. Their purpose is to trigger reactions in the mind, measuring feelings and prejudices rather than detailed opinions on policy. I'm probably going to do that anyway because I did this. This is actually what inspired this last time with Jason. Is I read the first question and I was like, I don't know what that means.
So well, what was the first question, dude?
The first question: if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. And I have the way the question is framed is so bizarre. because it's, first of all, it isn't really a question, it's just a statement, and it starts with the presupposition that economic globalization is inevitable. And then after that, well, I mean, and you can agree or disagree with that, but the problem is it's a presupposition. It should primarily serve the interests of humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. You have to, like, I don't really know what that means. It's extremely vague.
I took it to mean that if it's inevitable, like if that's the route that we are on, which is a likely option, um, that we should focus on broadening like social welfare, or not wealth, equity, like having a higher total equity for the human population so that everyone's standard of living is increased. That's how I took the question. So
The way it's sounding to me is that it's asking if, or it's a proposition. It's not really a question, like you said. But it's saying if global economization is inevitable, then the businesses. Can you read the last part for me?
It should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations.
Okay, so it should focus more on on social programs rather than uh, the privatization and benefits or anything that would benefit like big businesses.
yeah, and that's where the things can come in, because if that was how I took it, I would have a completely different answer.
What are transnational corporations made of?
Well, you're
Apple.
thinking if it's like think
No,
big businesses.
What are they made of?
What do you mean?
Companies are made up of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So part of the problem is it should primarily serve humanity, which is people, rather than the interests of transnational corporations, which are vague
smaller groups
made
so
up of people.
You have to think for big businesses like let's say Apple, like Amazon. The important decisions for those companies are made by people in executive positions that do not have rarely worked in entry level positions for that job. So you are the ideals and things that would benefit the warehouse workers aren't the same things that would benefit the people in the executive positions. So when policies are made by governments to benefit big corporations, it's quite often that the people in the entry level positions will not see those benefits come back to them because the people at the top will regulate it so that they see the benefits and not the others.
I didn't realize this question actually never ever touches on. This question never actually touches on like government involvement.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I absolutely strongly disagree with it, or disagree with it at the very least. I'm gonna click disagree. Because whether or not government involvement is there, like, is irrelevant. It actually boils down at this point to a question between the perception of the question. I think is constructed so that it's basically you have to choose between the goose and the golden eggs. A company takes care of its employees because its employees have value, and high turnover rates hurt the company quite badly. So you want to make sure that people can work in your company and be happy and, like, actually do the work.
Of course, I can agree to that. But what about the detriment?
Well, because if your company doesn't exist, there's not a job. It's that simple. You have to take care of both. You can't just completely commit to one or the other, because if you do it one way, nobody's going to work for you. If you do it the other way, like, you're not going to have a company for anybody to work for.
Yes, but this question would also be saying that that globalization should benefit Walmart over a local grocer. Like, that is what the question is.
And when you frame it like that, it's a little bit different because if it's a global economy, you should focus on the bigger businesses there. I think we're reading really far into this question.
We are. Like
We're
on
doing
question
exactly
one.
what it told us not to.
I mean, I said it. I said it. I read it.
Yeah,
And I was
you
like,
did.
I did this already. It's just kind of how I work.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah,
Well, that was fun. I want to keep going. I want to get to some more questions. I feel like there's a lot there.
There's a lot of questions as well.
Oh, this one's super easy. I'd
Yeah.
always support my country whether it was right or wrong. That is a strongly disagree from me.
Strongly disagree
Hard
from me
no.
as well.
Hard pass.
I think we can all agree on that one.
So while he's going through some of these questions, Jason, I want to ask you: Do you think that political parties? I guess do you think that in terms of separating ideals, instead of not to take the election process into consideration in this, do you think that solely for the purpose of separating ideals, that people would benefit by shying away from the two-party system and joining whatever political party fits them more?
Very much. I think people would have a lot more involvement as well as belief in the political system.
And I'll let you. You can keep going.
I wanted to just quickly mention that surprisingly, there was reporting on MSNBC that was relevant. That doesn't happen. But MSNBC, I forget who it was, but they interviewed an activist that would report on like Black Lives Matter protests, and what that individual said was that a lot of people within those protests do not plan on voting, like, because Bernie is not on the ticket, and that they are not willing to vote for someone that they do not care about or share values with, or do not share a majority of values with.
I was about to say that I'm certain there's values that they share with
of course,
Joe Biden.
But I guess I'm talking like more broader.
I actually think that's what
social.
his VP pick was about. I think that was an appeal to the people who wanted Bernie.
I agree. I disagree with that because a
completely-
lot of the people,
that was a fuck you.
Yeah, a lot of the people that like
Don't know.
Bernie don't like Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because Kamala is right there in that moderate bubble with Joe Biden, whereas he could have picked someone like Elizabeth Warren, who's a lot closer to Bernie than Kamala is in terms of social systems or social.
Kamala
beliefs.
appears to those who are looking for a surface appearance of racial equality in the country, not a actual change, but a surface appearance. But there were worse options that he could have picked, and there were a lot better options. So
I don't disagree with the pick. I think it was a safe pick for him to make given his current standings in polls, because he had a average of 9-point lead at the time.
But that shrank.
It did shrink, but I don't think it shrank because of the VP pick. A VP pick doesn't make or break an election for you, but it'll give you a temporary boost in the media. And a lot of people were convinced he was going to pick basically either Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris. And so I think the failure about picking Kamala Harris is that it didn't have a surprise factor to it. And so a lot of people were just like, oh, well, I could have called that. But
yeah, I called that 3 or 4 months before it. I was like, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just there's some strategy there, but it's
We all ready for this next question that I can
Yeah.
poke holes in?
You
Yes,
found
we are.
another interesting one.
I mean, the whole thing is interesting.
Yeah.
I planned
Well,
just to like bullet through the ones that were not interesting, so we could find the ones that were interesting. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it.
I think that has to do with the question that you did, or that you answered earlier, similar to that question, that said, "I will stand with my country, regardless of if they're right or wrong." I think it's a very similarly phrased question.
I think it has way less to do with the country you're born in versus the country you end up living in. Because I think there's a lot of reasons to be proud of a country that you choose to live in, but where you're born doesn't make, like, you could be born in a terrible country,
No,
and you could be not proud of it.
I agree.
Like
I guess I
proud
took
of
the
North
question
Korea.
differently.
There's also this really interesting phenomenon that when people come over to America and they talk to Americans, we're very, very proud of the countries we've come from. Like I love the fact that my ancestors came over from Ireland. Like when I went over on my honeymoon, I made a point to visit the area where my ancestors came from, which is this little rinky-dink field in the middle of nowhere, by the way. Like,
Isn't Ireland just a rinky-dink field in the middle of nowhere?
yeah, but it's green. That's pretty cool. Also, I didn't realize this until I went over there, but the entire country is the size of New York State.
It's a little one.
Yeah, it's one of the small ones. Ooh, this is fun. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races.
So we're not going to touch on Nazism again in this
Well,
podcast.
Actually, this is funny because
We already did.
Oh wait, we already talked about
We already
Hitler.
talked about
Shit.
Hitler. Oh no, we didn't. So this is funny because, like, if you perceive race as being human race as a collective group of humans, then I agree. We're far superior to dolphins.
I don't think that's what it's asking.
No, I don't think that's what it's asking either. So I'm gonna have to punch a strongly disagree on that. I've met a lot of people who are just garbage tier people, and it has nothing to do with skin color. Nothing.
There are also those that are like, oh, I'm justifying it because like black people can avoid sunburn. Like that's
you should put on
that is an excuse.
Jason has the eyelash mutation where he can see in snow because he's from fucking
Swedish eyebrows actually let you see better. They block snow from blizzards. It's weird how that
Ireland,
works.
So my skin naturally allows me to obtain skin cancer more quickly.
Your liver is also the liver of a champion.
Exactly. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Disagree. That's not true.
Common enemies.
I think mildly disagree on that one.
I don't know where I'd be on that.
I think there's only a couple things I've strongly disagreed on.
Is there a neutral button or no?
No, there's none. You're not
there's four.
So you have to so you either have to strongly disagree, agree, or strongly agree.
Yeah, there's
I think that's another interesting question here. Do you think that it's a good thing to not have that neutral option there because you have to decide on an issue, or can you be neutral on an issue?
I think you can be neutral on an issue, but I think it's more likely that you haven't thought an issue through hard enough to have an opinion.
Yeah, it's more forcing an opinion out of you.
Mm-hmm.
I
just a core opinion. I think that's how it actually works. Because it goes to the root of your beliefs.
I don't know if I like that.
The problem is this test isn't going to the root of your political beliefs. This test is going to your initial presuppositions about a question. And it openly admits that that's the case, but that's a rather poor way to go about trying to figure out the way somebody thinks.
Do we have I can't think of a better method that we could use, though.
Well, I don't know of any better methods. I don't know of any other methods at all, really. I think the only real method to find out the way somebody thinks is to sit down and talk to another individual for a while about what they think and why they think it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think reasoning.
We actually already talked about this. Ultimately, this test is a fun little thing you can do on the internet and show your friends that you're not Hitler. But
Unless you are.
And then you don't share it. But at the end of the day, the problem is this test does the same thing that everything else does. It puts people into boxes where you then don't have to contend with their individual ideas.
I don't see. My thing is, I think it's nice to know, and I agree. It's a fun little thing you can do on the internet. Tell people you're not Hitler, but you can also tell people you're not Bernie. You can also tell people you're not Gandhi. Like, I don't know. I think that it's nice to see where you're at, but I don't
Out of
think
all those, I think it's the most important to not be Hitler. I think
yeah,
that's the,
I think
That's the key.
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah, I guess. But I think this circles back to the question I asked Jason earlier. Do you think it's better to be sorted into a more refined box, or do you think it's better to be in these broader groups of political parties?
I think it's fine to be in that smaller box as long as you don't take it too literally.
Well, here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with this. When you have, like, the boxes are actually necessary. And the reason the boxes are necessary actually loops back to this interesting thing that your eyes and your brain team up to do. You need a pretty low resolution view of the whole world so you can comprehend it very quickly. The problem is you can move this. Let's say that we accept this concept of it's okay with putting people in more refined boxes. That's great. Let's put people in more refined boxes. Okay, then what? Can we put them in more refined boxes? Actually, yes, we can take all of these boxes that we've created and we can break them up into smaller boxes. And this actually goes until you get back to the only real way to talk to people, which is at the individual level.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because that's and not to bring math into this, but that's actually what we've been doing in my math class. Is we've been taking any number ever, and like we've been doing pi. We took pi and we had to take like one number on the left side of pi and one number on the right side of pi, and just kind of narrow it down and try and get it as close down to center and have pi still in between the two. And it's like you can get as close as you want, but you're not gonna have. Eventually, you're just gonna end up with pi. You're gonna end up with the individual in this case, and then, like you said, the only real way to determine an individual's beliefs is to just talk to them, like a person. That's the issue with computer-based analysis of human behavior and stuff like that. Is it's computer-based. It's not human-based.
That's why computers don't write music well.
Computers only work at big boxes, not little boxes.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if I can reach the end of the page before we have to cut to a break. We're going to. There's only 2 more questions. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. This is tricky because
international law.
They haven't defined military action. They haven't defined international law. And it also says sometimes justified.
Military action, I would say, would be one country's government against another country's government or civilians. But it had to be the action of a country's government.
I mean, part of my problem is, like, I initially looked at this question and I read it, and the first thing I thought was, I have no idea. It depends entirely on the level of each of these terms that you.
Well, if it uses the term sometimes, so
and
like, it's sometimes
that's the
okay.
real kicker, like, because if it was military action is always justified or never justified, that's something you can agree or disagree with. This is like military action is sometimes justified.
I think there's a vaguity, even, and I don't know if vaguity is a word, but we're gonna use it
now.
It is now.
Let's put it on T-shirts and sell it. Vaguity.
I think that is present even with always and never, because you can pick, like, oh, circling back to Hitler, this country is mass murdering and ethnic cleansing. Well, I said that military action is never okay, but I think it'd be okay for this. So then
Yeah,
you
but
move
with
to
that,
sometime.
I don't think that would be international law breaking at that point. But I don't know anything
That
about
is
international law either.
international laws like war crimes and that kind of stuff.
I am proposing an alteration to the question
Absolutely.
where it suggests that the question is framed in the context in which both countries have histories of abiding to international law.
Okay,
So,
I
for
can agree with
example,
that.
if you are breaking international law against a country that never cared about it in the first place, I think that is different.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. But that would mean that you would agree with the question, because then you would mean it was sometimes justified.
I disagreed. I did not strongly disagree with that one.
I
I think that's
think
the best answer. And
I think we're on the same page about that question roughly, but I think
I
I
would
fall on
say
the
I'm
side
around there,
where my instinct is to say I don't even know. I really don't know about this one.
my instinct on
That
that
one was
one is
hard.
probably
If I-
agree. Because it is, I would never strongly agree or disagree with this question. I would say
Yeah,
I'm towards the middle on this.
Here, I'm going to say disagree, and here's the reason. If you have an idea, and I didn't do this until right now, but this helped me figure out this question. If you have an idea, you should think through what the worst case scenario possibility of that idea is. And you should weigh it against what the potential outcome would be that would be good. Like compare the maximum good and the maximum evil that would come out of a decision.
And more evil will come out of that.
Well,
because assume that it's more likely you're going to be on the negative end, because at no point in your whole life has every plan you've ever made gone perfectly according to the way you thought it was going to turn out.
Correct.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say disagree to that one.
I see that one brought up a thing that could still be happening. I haven't paid enough attention to it recently, but the U.S. withholding essential medical equipment from, I believe it was Iran, like blocking entry of like life-saving drugs to that country, which is illegal.
I'm not a huge fan of us being involved in other countries to begin with.
I agree with that.
There's no real reason for us to be anywhere else.
And also violating international law.
We got a couple minutes before the end of this, and I want to get to the end of the first page before this. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment.
Wait, what?
Strongly disagree, I guess. There's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment.
News stories
I agree.
to be like, yeah, I agree. It's worrying that like news stories are all caught up about trying to be entertaining and stuff like that to get views and clicks and reads, rather than actually reporting what is going on properly.
There's now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. See, as soon as I read that, my brain went straight to satire.
Yeah.
Because that's what that means to me. When you're talking about fusing information and entertainment, my brain immediately goes to satire. That's what it is to me. And I was like, I don't have a problem with satire. I love satire.
Yeah, I love satire too.
I also don't think that it's a weird question, but all the questions have been weird. They're not particularly well written.
But I think that question
or maybe they are well written.
I think that's the point of them. I think they are well written.
Like that one, if you look at it through the lens of like South Park being a fusion, it's like, of course I'm not worried about South Park.
But you guys perceive like standardized news outlets as fusing information and entertainment. That's your perception of them.
I agree with this question from one direction, where you fuse in information to the entertainment, but not fusing in entertainment to the information.
Guys, this is what fusing entertainment and information is. This podcast right here. But in the meantime, we're going to cut to a break, and we will be right back. Thank you for sticking with us after the break, and welcome back. So Andy has already found another question that he thinks we're gonna like. So I'm gonna let him fire that one off.
People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality.
That's a tough one.
It's rough.
Okay, but for me,
I will say that I think I disagree with it, because ultimately, basically, what it says is it thinks that people are divided more by income than by culture. And I think the
Uh,
diversity of cultures in the world far outweighs the the economic diversity in the world.
I would say class separates more, and my mind immediately goes to the literal separation, and thinking about the real life bossing say, where people are separated by class. There's the outer ring with the lower class, the middle ring with the middle class, and the upper ring with the higher class. And so even though there's not these definitive rings in real life, there is uh policies like redlining that uh basically take low income housing and puts them or groups them together in poorly funded neighborhoods. And you get these areas in, like, let's take New York, for example. You got the middle class living in the suburbs, the upper class living in the city itself, and then you have the lower class living in rundown neighborhoods. And so I think class in the literal sense separates. I think in a more ideal based, it it's a little more tricky. I think that nationality might uh, have clashes and ideals more, but in a literal sense, I think that that wealth and or what is it, class separates more.
yeah, well, like wealthy individuals from different countries work to, like, I guess, how do I put this? Do you think it's more likely to see a CEO having dinner with another CEO from a different nationality, or or the garbage man, for lack of a better word?
Well, that's tricky, because you could think the CEO could have dinner, maybe not with one of his workers, but he could have dinner with, I don't know, his wife who works as a school teacher. Like, there's
I mean,
there,
I don't think it matters who anybody has dinner with.
yeah.
It was more separate. Having dinner with someone is the opposite of being divided, so that's why I use that as an example.
Have you never been to a Thanksgiving dinner?
Oh, I don't go to those.
No politics at the table.
I'm done with those.
If the Cowboys lose, you're all going home. I'm not a Cowboys fan, for our listeners.
I think it's worth noting here that I actually think it's easier to shift around classes than it is to shift around nationalities, like cultures. Culture is pretty heavily embedded into a society, and class in a free market system anyway, class is not so much. It's a lot less stable than everybody perceives it as being.
It is hard work and it is luck, and you need both to be successful.
Well, but you can say it's hard work and luck, but you can also influence your luck with hard work, and that's notable because it means that it's possible for you to do a ton of hard work and still not get what you want. But if you continue that process of like putting hard work in and influencing luck in your direction, it's not that you win every time, it's that you influence it so that over time you win more than you lose.
Yeah, it's like if you are, like, there was a study done on this about how people perceive their own success, and it found that the most successful people, well, in terms of, I forget what metric they used for success, probably something monetary based, but those at the top of that, we're both very lucky and very hardworking. And so you can't get there with just either. And if you're really hardworking and you don't have that luck, you're not going to get there either. It's both. You need.
I do dislike placing luck in its own separate category, and I also do prefer to think of it as chance. And the reason I don't like it is because it's not helpful. Like the narrative that you require luck to be successful or chance, it is so not helpful that I believe it to be detrimental. You don't need chance. It's helpful, but you don't need luck.
If your goal is to open a burrito restaurant and either you are born into a lower income neighborhood and are struggling or are working extra hours in order to support your family with food by putting food on the table, or you were born with $1 million trust fund, there's where chance comes in. And chance is definitely a factor.
I think that I like to think of this as a race. Like the wealth you're born in, the class you're born into is your starting line, and some people start way further back than others. But the end goal is at least in capitalism, the end goal is to make a lot of money. And everyone's definition of a lot of money is different. And so for a lower class person, their end goal might be middle class. I mean, I'm sure they'd want to, like, once they reach that goal, to make another goal. But I think it's about goal setting in terms of moving up the economic ladder. And I think the starting line is different because not everyone's gonna get a small loan of $1 million. Like it's about where you start and where you aim on going, and the hard work that you need to get to that point. Because I think at least in lower levels, hard work pays off a lot more. But I think as you get more so to the top and towards the end of the race, it becomes more luck based.
Well, hard work at the beginning appears to pay off a lot more proportionally to what you had before. But if you're looking at the amount of gains that you get then compared to the amount of gains that you get from luck, like hard work cannot alone make you $1 million in like a year. That's just, you can't work that hard.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part.
And intelligence can set you up for retirement, pretty candidly.
Yeah, but see that's what I'm saying is that like, hard work will get you from point A to point B if point A is lower, or point A and point B are lower on the scale. But yeah, yes, of course, when you get higher up the economic scale, your payoffs are gonna be more, because I think that the economic scale is very exponential between middle class and upper class.
It also depends on what you want. Like, we have been focusing really heavily in this topic, particularly on economic advancement. You might not want that. Like, you might prefer to have a family and spend more time with your family and leave your economic status alone.
Yeah,
that's actually the beauty of capitalism in a nutshell, is that you are free to utilize your labor in the best way you see fit.
Yes, that is assuming, though, that you have access to baseline labor that can pay the bills. And not everyone does. Like, if having, like, for example, someone could work as, I know this from a friend, but work as a lumberjack, which is a very dangerous job and a very risky job, especially if you have a family that relies on your income. So pointing to that as an option, being like, oh, well, why are you complaining? You can make the money you need at this job. I don't think that's very fair to force someone into a role where they're compromising the safety of themselves, which compromises the safety of their families' economic security as well.
I mean,
As well
it
as
doesn't have to work there because that's what capitalism is about.
Oh yes, for sure. But if that's the only job in the area that that person could get that would actually pay the bills, I think there should be more options than that for jobs.
I agree.
I
And
agree
that's why
with
I love
more
free
job
markets.
options.
Because it means that anybody can move anywhere and start a business. In theory, that's what the free market is about.
Yes, but I think the free market is not working unless anyone that wants a job can have a job. Not like you're not going to have like a magical. You go to 1 hour a week and you get $1,000 or $1,000 for that week, $1,000 an hour.
Well, I think there's also a problem, and this will be like, I'm just gonna discuss like the homelessness crisis real quick, because there's this loop where once you hit an economic collapse, and once you become homeless, it's really hard to have a job, because you have to have an address to have a job, and if you don't have an address, you can't have a job, because they need something to put on file for payroll and tax purposes. And so if you don't have an address, you can't really have a job. And so I think that's an issue too. And
I think that gets into overbloated federal regulations.
Yeah.
Like that's ludicrous. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, like, if someone is willing to give you a job as a homeless person, you should be able to get that job. Like, that's just that is the federal government preventing you from getting a job if you're homeless. It's actually the government regulation locking you into the lowest class. That's what that is.
Yeah,
it's the same thing that we discussed before when we were talking about people on welfare. If they make us a little bit over a certain amount, they automatically lose that and in turn have less total money for working more. Because of systems like that.
And I think it's part of the issue is that in like these more rural areas, homelessness isn't seen as often as it is in places like New York City, because in these rural areas there is, I for lack of a better term, I'm just going to call it under the table jobs. There's local work where people can hire you for farm work. People can hire you for yard work, like different outdoor stuff that like you can just do and get paid in cash to do. So, like,
I definitely would advocate for some sort of tax distinction. Like, say you do like a 1 week job for someone, I do not agree something like that should have to be filed under taxes, or I guess you may have to claim it as income, but it should not be taxed at all. You shouldn't be taxed for small little things. If you are working for like 6 months under someone, there is a situation in which you should be like legally employed by that.
I would be careful about that, because I feel like that's a loophole waiting to happen. A loophole for
deportation.
I just don't I've been kind of tuned out because I did this whole next page.
They're fine.
But like I don't understand why. I don't understand why, as a nation, we let the federal government get away with that much hyper-regulation that it actually creates and maintains a bottom class.
Like, oh yeah, it actively maintains a.
I don't understand why we let that happen as a
military service. Military service.
You have to think it's also the same. It's also the same government that that regulates an unemployment rate. Like the unemployment rate never drops below, I think, like 5% ever.
Like 5 or 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5% ever. But I mean that's not completely due to the government. That's kind of due to people like switching jobs and all that, which is fine. But it's like you can't regulate everything. And it's I think I don't know what the goal is, but it's kind of absurd that they could just like screw over homeless people that bad.
Yeah, currently I'm working on a project regarding homelessness and lower income housing within Los Angeles. And I have definitely uncovered a lot of different things that relate, well, in some ways specifically to Los Angeles, but in some ways can be general. And one of those is access to like monetary systems like banking and credit unions and stuff like that, and how important that is for people to have access to. Because I mean, for me, I don't think about that. I can get access when I need to, but that's not the case for everyone. And one thing that used to be a thing that I really wish would be brought back, maybe not right now while the system is so broken, but postal banking. The post
Oh, the
post
post office
office,
used to be a bank. That's
they
right.
used to offer bank services, and I think that was an excellent thing.
Yeah, because you could have a PO box and tie that to a bank account, right?
Yes,
Which
yes,
then in turn you could do, or you could
it covered
use as
everyone.
yeah, well, yeah, but you could use it as a you could use that for employment.
Yeah. And it was also completely optional.
Yeah.
You don't want to use a post office bank? You don't have to use a post office bank. You want to use one? You can use one.
I wouldn't hate that because I hate going to a town and being like, where the fuck is the bank? You know? It's like
Yeah.
I would like,
Everybody's got a post office. So.
yeah, every town has a post office. Every
It's
real
like,
town.
well, large banks do not want market share being taken away.
By the government. Yeah.
I just had a slew of strongly disagrees. I didn't expect it, but they were like, listen to these. These are great. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all of the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system.
Nazis.
Yeah,
I
right?
just, I had I was in a 4-person Zoom discussion the other day in which 3 of us were American and 1 of us was Chinese. And she was just like, 2-party system? In China, we have a 1-party system.
It's currently working out great.
And
That's called
well,
the Muslims over there.
Isn't there like a Holocaust going on over there?
They're
pretty
all in
much.
concentration camps.
Yeah,
They rounded
the
up all the
Uyghurs,
Muslims and put them in
right?
concentration camps.
Uyghurs.
Uyghurs, yeah. I said the Whigs, the Uyghurs.
But
Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need be worried. Strongly disagree.
I disagree with that.
Strongly disagree on
I
that one.
disagree with that
I
as
mean,
well.
the death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes, and I strongly disagree with that.
I
don't think it's
disagree with that.
people's jobs to kill other people.
I agree.
In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded.
Absolutely disagree.
Yeah, like 4 in a row. I was just like, nope.
I think
nope.
yeah, I think I hit that disagree line as well.
Oh, that was wild. I actually do think this question is interesting. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals.
I strongly disagree with that, and I think that's the whole purpose of prison is rehabilitation.
I actually
It's not
agree with that one.
it's not punishment.
I
The
agree
goal
with
of
that
prison
one.
is not
Some
punishment.
people are
The goal
too
of
far
prison
gone.
is rehabilitation.
So the question is, I'm taking it as some people are just too far gone,
I could agree with that.
and I agree.
I agree with that. I do
Well,
think
you didn't have the question that preempts this one is in criminal justice punishment should be more important than rehabilitation, to which I strongly
okay.
disagreed.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then it followed up with it's a waste of time to rehabilitate some criminals, and I was like, that
Okay.
one is true.
Okay.
Like, that's accurate.
yes.
Yeah. So I think that precursor.
Like
is
for example, people who have a history of animal abuse or domestic crimes, they have very rarely are rehabilitated at all. There are just inherent issues to people that engage in those behaviors.
I don't. I think that's a poor example. I think those are poor choices. I think that they're saving those. I think for me, the ones that are too far gone are murderers. Like way too far gone. Do I think that is a death penalty? Of course not. But do I think that they can be rehabilitated? Absolutely not.
First degree, I do not. I think it
So,
depends on the degree. I think
I don't know what this question
possibly second, often 3rd degree murder can be rehabilitated, but not I think
Not first degree.
not
Absolutely not.
not first degree, not that premeditated.
Oh yeah.
But it also depends on who you're murdering. Like, for example,
No, I don't
the
think
Bin
it
Laden
does.
raid. The Bin Laden raid. That was that
Okay,
would be first degree
different.
murder.
Yeah,
that wasn't.
that's
Yeah,
a-
but that's not. That's not. Was that? Would you consider that a crime? No, because it's
No.
pulled off by the government. It's a government raid.
It was effectively like a war thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like an
Like
act of policing.
that's not the same thing at all.
Yeah,
Like
not at all.
premeditated murder is like, you have some inspector kicking down the door at the end of the movie, firing off the list of aha, and this is what really happened. Like, so
Well, I hope that was a pipe and not
it was actually a cigar in my head.
a cigar.
What was there was a movie recently.
Knives
about-
Out.
Knives Out.
Knives
yeah.
Out. What a
That
great
Knives Out is a
movie.
great
What a
movie.
great movie. Not that this is a plug for Knives Out, but you should go watch it. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Watching
This
watching
is
James
absolutely
Bond pretend to be someone else.
this is
Right.
absolutely a plug for Knives Out.
Let me-
Knives
let
Out.
me-
Catch it in theaters, not anymore.
It's already gone. Let me fire this question at you because I just don't understand it and I don't know anything about it. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries.
Plant genetic resources.
That might actually be a word salad.
I completely understand this one.
I don't understand the
and
plant genetic
yes.
resources, but I
Yeah, I don't
understand the resources.
Wait, explain again.
Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries.
Yes. For example, Monsanto will go into developing countries to extract genetic information from local plants. That is a thing that happens.
Is that unethical? Do the plants feel bad about it?
I do not think that is unethical.
No.
All right, then we're gonna go ahead and disagree with that one. 'cause now
Yeah, I don't
Now-
strongly
now-
disagree because it is sort of taking people's like local environment. So that's why I disagreed instead of strongly disagreed. But
I didn't feel a need to strongly or agree or disagree with it because I
Yeah.
don't know enough about it. Basically,
yeah,
it's like your brief description of it was like, sounds like nobody's getting hurt. We're just collecting data on plants. I don't really see a
Yeah,
problem.
Yeah,
as long as it's not
nobody's
like
getting hurt.
deforestation, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I really don't care. But like, if it's hurting the
Astrology
environment or hurting the
accurately
people that live there.
explains many things.
What does it say?
Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly agree.
What sign are you?
Gemini? Yeah, I'm a Gemini.
Oh yeah, because you're
Yeah.
early June, right? Yeah.
I'm like late. June,
Classic
actually.
Gemini.
Yeah, I know.
no.
What a Gemini thing to believe in
I actually want
astrology.
to kind of
Cancer
touch on this next
squad.
question. You cannot be moral without being religious. And I think this question is interesting because I think they kind of circle back on each other.
I disagree.
You can theoretically be moral without being religious, but
Can you be religious without being moral?
Yeah, I think
well,
so.
You can be both, right? Like this
Yeah.
is one of those. Like, it doesn't really matter what you call yourself. Your moral system is based on some religious thing, and it's a really like this. These are concepts that run extremely deep in society and individuals, and having that's kind of like a snake that eats its own tail. I think.
I think.
Like,
Well,
think
It just
mean,
kind of
I
loops
think-
back on itself.
I think you just answered your own question. Then
Morality
I
is
think
society.
I think you disagree with that question at the very least. Then, based off of your explanation there, because you believe that you can be moral without being religious.
I think you can. Well, I think you can be moral without being religious, but I think that when you do that, you become religious. Even if you're not, you can be moral without being religious, but you're still acting out a morality defined by a religion.
I think religion.
Not necessarily
For me,
defined by
religion's
religion.
based off of deity. Like I mean myself, I've considered myself agnostic. I'm not very religious at all, but I mean I consider myself a highly moral person.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the exact same there. Although I am interested in the philosophies of Buddhism, but I think that's for later in my life.
What if now is later in your life, Jason? What if you die today?
I don't think I'm being
I think I agree
reincarnated
with
either
this
way.
one for bizarre reasons. I think I agree with this one, but not for the reasons they think I agree with this one.
What's the question?
It's it's the same one. You cannot be
Oh.
moral without being religious. I think that the question itself is wrong in a way that it doesn't even understand.
Well, it depends on how you're defining morality. Because morality, I do not at all tie to religion. I believe religion can inform your morality, but your morality is completely independent.
I have that same view. I don't think I don't think you need to be religious to have morale or have a moral.
It so much depends on what you mean by both of those things that the question itself invalidates itself.
Moral is in
I
like,
think you're just thinking way too far into it.
No,
Moral
I
is
think I'm
an
thinking the
inherent
right
belief.
level about it.
Like if you're not religious, are you Hitler? Like that's the question. If you're not religious, are
Yeah,
you
but
going to
that's not
mass
the
murder a
question.
bunch of people?
That's not the question.
But
The question says
that's
you cannot-
morality.
it's-
Morality.
You cannot be moral without being religious, and that is technically true. You don't have to adhere to any specific religion to be moral, quote unquote. But if you have no religion, you have no basis for your moral foundation.
You have no basis, but you can still have morals.
Yeah, but because you have no basis, you have no definition for it, so you can't be moral because you don't accept the concept of
we
morality.
are saying the
I mean, my
definition of
morality-
morality exists without religion.
My basis of morality, like what I look at for my morals is how I don't want to say how the mass people act, but like I think my basis of morality is how I was raised, not based on my religion.
Like I subscribe to societal morals,
Yes.
some of them, and some of my personal morals.
Yeah.
It's a combination of both, and a few from religion. Religion, it's
I don't have
religion,
any from
society, and how you're raised. Those inform your morals, and you could just sort of see where you want your morals to be.
It's also really interesting to me because my perception is that once you do that, you've effectively created an alternative religion.
Yes, pretty.
And that's why the question is broken.
No,
If-
I
if
think
you
it's
were
just
defining-
it's based on your
That's fine.
definition of religion.
If
Andy,
you were
you're
defining
overthinking the hell out of this. I really
no,
do think.
No, he is not. He is
I
defining
think he
religion
is.
as a set of moralities.
Well, because religion has always been a descriptor for how to behave in society. That's what religion has always been. It's been like, and it also
Also
way back
explain
when it
how
was
you
an
die,
explanation
or
for
what
like,
happens when you
yeah,
die.
what happens after you die. But it also it lays the groundwork for how a society should behave while interacting with each other. So if
Yeah.
your morals are based on society's desire to interact with each other, you've created a religion with morals to interact within that society.
I think this relies less on the definition of morale or morals and more on the definition of religion.
I think it relies equally on both. And
I
that's
think
where
it
starts to
relies
fall
more.
apart.
I think it relies more on the definition of religion. I think of religion more as worship and requiring a deity or deities.
Yes.
But
Worship
that's just
deities and beliefs about external experiences from your physical life, such as the afterlife.
All right, let's see if I can find
yeah.
another question. That one was fun. I enjoyed that.
That was an
a good
interesting
time.
one.
Some people are naturally unlucky. Disagree.
No, I also disagree. I was like thinking in my head. I was like, can you be born? No, that's the whole point of luck. All right, Andy, how close are you to that end of this quiz?
That
We
depends.
got 10 minutes.
That one
I'm on page 5 out of 6. I've been working while you guys have chit.
Some people are naturally unlucky. For example, like if someone has a brain that would function really well for for being an NBA athlete, and they don't have the height. Like height is a big part of that.
Naturally unlucky.
I think luck has to do. I define luck differently. I'll leave it at that.
Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged.
No, I
disagree. Andy might. I don't know if you agree with that. You probably are more towards the agree side, from what I know about you.
Yeah. Well, because Social Security is.
I think they mean not the program Social Security, but like having a social safety net for them,
Yeah.
like social programs. Because I know you might be thinking about Social Security in terms of the Social Security
actual
program for
program,
retirement. Yeah.
It's like, say you lose your job, it would be like a parent or someone loans you or gives you some money to help you stay off the street.
Yeah.
It's just that, but the government does it.
I wish there was I do wish there was an option for I haven't figured this out yet, but there isn't one. But until
honestly,
there is,
that's
I am going to throw out an agree because I don't believe that the federal government is capable of creating a system for charity, which is what social programs are, that isn't fundamentally broken. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Same skeptical. Oh, this is a great one.
That doesn't state his belief on that one.
Yeah.
Morality based in religion.
And that's also just, you can have your own beliefs, and why should anyone give a fuck?
Sex is nice.
Of course, I left the entire last pages all about
I mean,
sex.
I'm not married.
That's one that I left for the last 7 minutes.
I've been staring at this question for a while. I wonder if you guys can help me on this. It says, "Is sex before marriage immoral?" What does that mean?
What does that mean? Really
what is morality? What is sex?
What is that?
You gotta make sure I check the box when I post this video that says this video is not for kids.
It was for kids right up until the last 7 minutes.
It was until I said the word
let's
fuck
see where
earlier.
I stand.
Yeah, I've said it more this one.
Blah, 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 blah. All right, now they're giving me the whole...
Because the topics are like...
Well, this should surprise nobody, but I'm pretty solidly in the libertarian right.
I'm not surprised.
I am not surprised at all. How
are
you
can you share your screen? Oh no, you're on the separate.
It's on a separate computer.
Oh yeah, that's right. We'll post the results of the video or the results in a link in the description for this video. But you can kind of describe where you are.
I can.
You can also give the coordinates.
I can. So my economic left-right is a 2.25. Okay. And my social libertarian / authoritarian is a negative 3.74.
Okay, so you're like are you close to the lines? They don't really give a tick marks.
I'm closer. I'm actually pretty close to the center. Yeah. I'm pretty close to the center in terms of left right.
Okay.
I'm a little farther in terms of authoritarian.
I'm just trying to get an idea of the scale. There's not really grid marks on this, so.
Yeah. I'm 2 across and 4 down.
Yeah. Okay.
I am. What was it? I was, I think 6 towards left, and then 7 down.
Oh my God, Jason.
I
was like 4 to the left, and like 3 or 4 down.
Well, it's like
I was like dead center. I was dead center, libertarian left.
I think I think it's also worth noting that this test should not be taken particularly seriously because, like, most of these questions are like we touched on like what 5 to 10 questions, out of like 40 or something, and like we just dug into these questions for a weird amount of time. Like they're not straightforward. They construe themselves as straightforward, but they're not. And to really figure out what you think and why you think it, I think actually debating and discussing some of these questions is really important.
And actually, like, taking the test itself, just thinking about those questions on your own too.
Except for they also define in the beginning that you're not supposed to think about those questions.
And I think that's part. I think that's part of the flaws of this is that when they want you to take this, it's kind of just like you take it, and then if you they just want your like instant reaction, because a lot of the time they think your first reaction is your belief, which isn't always true. Sometimes when you think about something a little more, it gives you like.
I find that almost all the time when you sit down and you think about something a little deeper, usually you come up with something that's a little closer to center than either side.
I
Although
think that's
the really important takeaway here, guys, is that I'm not Hitler.
Oh,
And that's the important takeaway.
That is-
really? I
I'm
don't
not.
believe that for
I'm
a
not.
second. I need to see your results now.
I don't know. If someone
No,
is in,
don't look at them. I didn't make up those numbers.
if someone is in the authoritarian right area, I question them, and if they're in the authoritarian left, I question them even more.
What do you
Well,
mean
yeah.
that you're not Hitler? I saw your results. It said you were 1 to the right and 9 up.
Uh-oh. That's not what that said.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know how many. I don't know if I know anybody who actually falls into under the fascism side, like of authoritarian. Like I don't.
you don't know anyone personally, but
I
I
don't
could
think
I could
so.
list off someone you do know. Donald Trump,
And
authoritarian right.
Joe Biden. And
Yeah,
Biden.
Joe Biden I think is authoritarian right also, and so is Hillary was authoritarian. Well, not
Hillary
right.
was a lot more authoritarian right than Biden is.
Yeah, Biden's almost.
And then Trump
center.
is way in the top corner.
Yeah.
How do we know this?
You can find
based
it. Yeah.
on voting records and
I can find
things they've
a.
said. It's
Uh,
I would lead to believe it is decently accurate, but I like how they put that preface at the beginning, so you won't take the entire thing entirely seriously. Because you
All right.
shouldn't take this
so
entirely
Donald Trump
seriously.
was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He was like 6.5 to the right, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up.
Oh.
And Hillary Clinton was a little further to the right, but like way less up.
Mhm.
She was like 1 more to the right and 1, 2, 3, 4,
Probably
5
5
up.
up.
She was 5
Yeah,
up.
I was like,
I'm trying to find Joe Biden.
I
on
do
this.
appreciate that this thing
I think he's
adds another
3 and 2.
dimension. I think adding an extra dimension is interesting because it does help people, I think, break out of the idea of thinking in terms of two dimensions only for politics, which
Well,
I do think is a real problem because like a lot of things are way more nuanced than we think, and I don't think there's many problems that exist that the federal government should actually bother being involved in or trying to solve.
Biden
don't know
is 7
much.
to the right and 3.5 up.
3.5 up. Yep, I see it. And Trump, they moved Trump over on this one because the one I was looking at was from 2016.
Okay, yeah.
The Trump
he's gone over the right.
Trump is 8 over and 9 up.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
how do you figure that out though? Like
They-
you do
well,
it based
they-
on his.
I think they
Based
either
on voting
took the
records
quiz or
and-
based on voting records and.
I mean,
voting records and public
specifically, I
statements.
would say for Trump that I don't know if you can use voting records because I don't know what he's voted on.
He's
Yeah,
just there's some balls. Well, we're gonna call it here though.
Just a quick. I'll show the map. Biden's here. Trump is
I
here.
think that also makes sense. That makes sense for a lot of interesting reasons. I'll throw out real quick that people who are older and who've been in politics for a while have like things have progressed over time. Like things naturally move to progress, like to socially being progressive.
Yeah.
So like if these people were doing voting 50 years ago, then they're going to look like they're on the right, even if they're not anymore. That's just is what it is.
Well, we're gonna call it here. Jason tried to call it earlier, but I'm gonna call it now. We'll catch you guys in the next episode where we'll be discussing. We don't know yet.
Yep.
All right.
See you
Have a
later.
good one.